Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to the Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Today, our guest is Mitch Zoll. Mitch Zoll, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great here in Austin, Texas, where I had to bring out my sweater for the second time this season because we're actually getting cold temperatures. So it was neat to kind of dig this out for today. We're recording. I could wear a sweater today.
Awesome. So, Mitch, where do you do, and where do you live? I think you are in Austin, but where you primarily live?
Sure. I'm an attorney representing small and mid-sized businesses here in Austin, Texas, representing them kind of from startup through sale and all the fun stuff in between.
Awesome. So, would you let us know why you started to be a lawyer and why you started the consultancy?
Sure. Yeah. Why would you become a lawyer? So I actually started my career as a business process and redesign consultant with Accenture. So when I graduated undergrad, that was my first job where we were looking at some, businesses from startups through the largest companies in the world and looking at their business processes from a technology or strategy basis to try and figure out how we could help them improve. We would start with the problem and try and figure out from a consultant basis, how can we help them solve that problem? I did that for about 5 or 6 years before looking up and realizing that was a lot of travel, a lot of running around. And I liked the idea of solving problems, but I wanted to come at it from a different angle. So I thought about going back to law school and went back to law school, had applied, left Accenture, actually worked in the Texas Senate for a term for starting law school. And then during law school, I applied for a clerkship, which is a different way that you get jobs in as a legal profession. Got a clerkship with a great law firm here in Texas and stayed on through them from, I think, 2002 to 2015-ish, where I had great experience. I was doing civil litigation and working with small clients and large clients, trying to figure out how we could help them defend civil litigation, but then also started looking at it thinking, okay, how did we get here? Even where our clients were in the right, which our clients are always in the right, it didn't prevent them from getting into legal disputes. So we started looking upstream, saying, what happened either in your contract or in your process that got you to the situation that we can get you before litigation occurs? I kept at the trial level side. I went for another firm for a little while to get more trial experience, but that pool of solving the upstream problem still kind of kept with me. And in 2019, I opened the Zoll Firm here in Austin, where I work with small and mid-sized clients to try and help them answer those problems from a process perspective so they understand their business from a legal perspective.
Awesome. So how do you differentiate your services from another ordinary lawyer?
Sure. Well, I could be an ordinary lawyer too. I look at it more from the education side. So we look at things as a consultant would look at a client and not say, let me draft your contract and just kind of throw it over the wall. If someone comes to me for a contract, I try and sit down with them and start with, and this is actually one of the most powerful questions I learned during my Texas Senate days, but it's kind of been a thread throughout my career. Always start with, what is the problem we are trying to solve? And when you are looking at implementing a new process, a new software, a new contract, if you start with that question, it cuts out everything else. You might have a person saying, oh, it can text in Comic Sans. Well, that's not solving the problem we're trying to address with this new process. So I look at matters from that process, from what is the problem we're trying to solve? And when I sit down to draft a contract for my client, I throw out the templates. They're welcome to bring me templates, but I walk you through the problem basis, like, okay, what happens if a client wants a refund? What happens if a client stops responding? And we look at that process and then we build the contract around it versus starting with a template that we all start with and just throwing it over the wall and saying, great, now you have a contract.
Yeah. So there is no brainer that you have a lot of experience with small and mid-sized companies. So what is the main thing that you are looking into? Like, what do you think? What are the missing parts for a founder or a businessman, and how these things can be improved?
I think a lot of times business owners are kind of playing business like kids play house. You know, you can see on the websites, oh, you don't need a lawyer to start your business. Just file a form with your Secretary of State. Absolutely. And if you spent a lot of money to have someone file a form with the Secretary of State, you did waste that money, right? It's $300 for me to do it or you to do it. And that's the simplest part. But that has nothing to do with starting a business. It's like having the child is very different from raising the child. And so if you want that part, that's great. And don't spend a lot of money on that form. But what a lot of founders seem to stop with is they get their business and they dive right in and they start going after it. But they don't slow down to think through, like, how does this work? What is the structure of what I need to do? Everything from where do you save your documents and how do you organize your internal files, to how do I review and look at contracts, to how do I just have meetings with myself to think through procedurally, what am I trying to do with this business?
All right, this completely makes sense. So I believe in this case, founders seriously need a lot of education, maybe in this case. And I believe many of the founders and business owners are afraid of meeting with consultants and the lawyers in this regard, because I believe there is a fear behind the scene, because they are small to medium-sized companies. So they must have a fear behind the scene that it might be a lot of costly and there will be a lot of legalities. So we are not sure if we should go there or not. So what are you doing in terms of educating these business owners so that they can reach to the relevant person?
Sure. So I'm looking at this myself. Again, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I'm actually working on a course right now for businesses. And the course is to walk you through kind of how to run a business from a legal perspective. It's not legal advice. It's not change this term of your contract, but it's business advice from a lawyer. What I was looking at, the problem, and I'm part of the problem, admittedly, is we've got kind of two competing setups for business owners. We've got going to work with a lawyer, which is like going to the dentist. You sort of have to do it, but everybody hates it. Even lawyers hate going to have to work with a lawyer when we're a client. I absolutely have been a client recently and hated it. But what that setup is set to be is that lawyers are going to hold the knowledge, right? We've got all the knowledge, we've got the training, we've got the templates, and we keep that in our pocket and then dish it out kind of on an hourly basis and just trying to throw it over the wall. That feels like it's a loss. It feels expensive and you don't really know what's going on, because you're not getting a lot of the knowledge transfer. On the other side of that, people say, well, if you're not going to give me the knowledge, fine, I'll just stop caring about it. And I go to a LegalZoom or a Rocket Lawyer, or just go to some template online and think, well, that looks like a contract and I didn't get the knowledge there and I spent a lot less money here. That's probably good enough. So they're actually locking in contracts that they don't understand because it's a lot cheaper. And they weren't valuing the knowledge that they were getting from the lawyer because the lawyer was holding the knowledge versus teaching. So I'm trying to jump in that middle space. That's the problem I'm trying to solve, and figure out how can I create a process where the client, the business owner, gets the knowledge to be kind of a most educated client. And then when it becomes that fine-tuned legal process, that's where I can jump in, provide that extra value. That's where I can say, okay, these are the terms you need to think through this part, be educated, and now let's talk about my experience. Coming from a lot of these setups from a litigator's perspective, I look at a contract to say, how is this going to look in a deposition? How is this going to look in a dispute, when that's not what you even do because you got the contract off the internet? So I'm trying to get to the point where people feel educated enough to understand what's in those agreements, and then we can find out how to match those agreements to what you actually do.
Yeah, I believe there are a lot of cases. In fact, we also faced these problems, and many other entrepreneurs and business owners faced many type of problems, I believe. And these problems can be faced even with the good contract. So I have heard many times that a client paid for your services, and after some time, client just opened a dispute, and maybe they paid via Amex or any credit card company, and after some time, they just reversed their whole money without any reason. So in these cases, many businesses bear a lot of problems, and then they have to go to the court, and there are a lot of processes that they have to go through. I believe if their contracts are good, if their contracts are written in a really good format and are written by a specialist, then these problems can be fixed. Awesome. So in terms of again, let's talk about the education, because this is a core part of your services. So in terms of education, are you advertising your course, or are you advertising your services through any platform, offline or online?
Right now, I'm putting it on my website. and kind of offering that. We're building it up. What we've been doing is going through and working with each of our clients to really fine tune, is this module valuable to you? Is this helpful to you? And as we build that up, trying to get to the questions, what are the questions that the clients are really trying to get answered? And so we're building that process up, but I'm not putting it on a lot of the like Udemy or those kinds of courses. That's going to be offered through our website so that we can kind of help guide the client through the process, the templates that come out of that process, and that education so they can figure out kind of how to work with us and improve their business.
Right. All right. So in terms of challenges, basically many entrepreneurs, business owners, in fact, every business owner, I believe, face challenges. So what are the most frequent challenges that you were able to see and you think these things can be fixed in some good manner?
So it's the legal side. It's funny. I look at some of the guides and the boards and how to start your business, and it's almost like that legal side is not even mentioned. How to do your SEO and how to do the marketing and clicking and how to position your product and all of these things. And at the end of the day, I sit there and kind of go, and legal, right? And the law side too. And it's not that everybody needs to go to a lawyer. I get it. That's not the fun part of starting a business. But in the same sense, I want people to remember that's a key component of your business. A lot of the lawyers out there are marketing on this concept of, fear and, oh, watch out for litigation. You're going to sue and lose everything. And then they push and push, and then they say, just use my template. It's a great contract. And then you're like, all right, I'll buy the template. And then they completely forget about that again. When I have handled disputes with clients, it's either when the client and the company or the owners themselves. And that's a lot of the disputes that we get into. It's really about communication. It's really about slowing down the business side to say, okay, I'm going to spend one day working as the owner of the business, the boss, the parent of this kind of thing, and sit down and stop with the SEO and the click and the fun stuff and say, what do I have on my contracts? What do I have in my clients? What do I have with my business partners? And really slow down and spend one day a quarter. We say quarterly meeting minutes are so important. They are. Spend one day a quarter, really sit down and thinking, what is my business and am I living to that ideal? There's the strategy side of it, there's the product side of it, but there's also the legal side of it to really understand what you have and how that's operating.
So let's say if someone is going to start a business, so what are the must-haves? We can say what are the three must-haves in terms of legals that they have to take care about?
So I'm to come up with a kind of really simple answer to a really complex problem, right? So that what do you must have? I can tell you 15 different things in a contract. Or I can tell you, here are some easy things that every business owner can do without paying a lawyer so that your business owner can actually set things up. One is set up your folder structure and your files and your documents. And I know that seems really simple to say, but it's apparently really incredible to do. There's no better example of why we need to do it right now than the LA fires. Right? People are sitting there thinking, I've lost everything. And they have. But as a business owner, you have an extra obligation to make sure you've got your business documents and your company files saved and preserved online in a way that when it comes down to it, you know where to find them. You want to be set up in a way that, like, what folder is your insurance policy in? Admittedly, it's usually in an email that at best you saved on the desktop of a laptop you can't find anymore. So one of the things that we offer to our brand new clients, and if your clients want to reach out to me, this is something I'm happy to give away as an easy thing. It's not a legal thing. It's just an easy file structure to say, this is where your lease goes. This is where your insurance policy goes. So when you're starting a business, start from that baseline to structurally build your business to know where everything is, regardless of the situation. And this kind of beginning with the end in mind started with, I help individuals buy and sell companies. And this basically is born out of a due diligence setup, right? So what are the documents that a buyer's going to ask for? How do you organize them? I thought, well, that should be something you start with. Let's start with that policy. So if you have a buyer come in and say, I want to buy your business, you can say, got it all right here. It's like keeping the maintenance records of your car. Nobody does it, but with the person who does, that's the car I want. So when you're starting your business, start with building the structure of knowing where all of your files are. And then that contract, and stop me if this is getting boring because I understand lawyer stuff, and then the contract part, understanding that contracts are more about the process and the communication. As a new business owner, it is great to sit down with sample contracts. I looked before we started our call. In my independent contractor folder, in my system, I have 58 different examples that I have pulled down. I don't have that one contract that I've got. I've got it if you're the contractor, I've got it if you're the business. I've got it for different jurisdictions. All of these little nuances, or if someone sends me a good one, I will actually look at it and deconstruct it to say, is there something I need that's really being well addressed well in this contract that I need for mine? So when you're starting your business, read all the contracts, figure out what you can pull down, because that will help you start thinking through your own internal business processes. Like, what do I need to do if someone asks for a refund? What do I need to do if someone stops responding? Or if I have deliverables that depend on their input and I've got them saying, well, yeah, I signed the contract, but go talk to the other guy. So a founder should really think through, after you get your business set up, how do I want to operate? And the contract can guide you through that process.
I think this is really important information and not boring at all, obviously, because listening these things these tips is better than losing a lot of money because of just negligence. So I roger that. All right. So in terms of acquiring a client, are there any parameters for you that you look into whenever you are acquiring a client?
So for me, I'm licensed within a certain state. So I'm licensed in the state of Texas. I'm also licensed in Colorado, although I don't actively practice there a lot. That was my kind of retirement plan, but I still got to work. So I'm not quite there yet. But so to provide specific legal advice on the impact of contracts or litigation, I am a Texas-based attorney. In terms of small businesses that are kind of global, I can help on certain things, but most of my focus is only in Texas because that's where my legal license sits.
All right. So let's say if we talk about a software company, is working in Texas, and let's say they find a client in Washington or maybe California. Now the state's laws and rules are different. So if there's a dispute between two companies and both of these companies are located in separate states, so how this dispute can be handled?
Sure. That's an important provision that we look to putting into our contracts. The courts basically look at the different entities and what relationship does this dispute have with our state? Like, why do we, the state of Texas, or we, Washington, need to resolve that? It can be the parameters of how you determine where a dispute occurs, and the law that controls resides with those two things. There are things you can put in the contract, though, that are very important to say, hey, we're big businesses, or we're acting like businesses. We are doing this for real, and we're going to agree that this is the area of law that applies. So a business can actually make that. Or the other thing that comes into the dispute, there's where the two companies are sitting. There's also where the work was performed, right? So we look at a dispute of where did the nexus of the problem happen. Easiest to think about is, where did the car accident happen, right? It happened between a California driver and a Washington driver sitting in the middle of Nebraska. Well, Nebraska has jurisdiction because it's relating to their population, their rules. But you can also figure out kind of diversity of jurisdiction. So there are things to put in a contract, again, thinking ahead of how we want to work, that says these parties in this certain way agree for disputes. This is the law we're going to agree with, and this is the area that we're going to have our dispute if we have one.
Awesome. That makes sense. Completely makes sense. So, what are the growth plans in terms of like your growth plans for next 3 to 6 months? I know you are going to launch your course shortly, but yeah, go ahead, please.
So the growth plan really is launching the course. It's changing from the pattern of kind of sitting at my desk waiting for someone to pay me to think, which is one way that lawyers often work. But I want to get a product out there that clients can sign on and say, I want to learn. So the 3 to 6 month process that we're on is really building that out, and that iterative process to have a course available for clients to be able to say, I want to learn how to run my business, and get that out. It will not be legal advice. Like, even with the question you just asked, I didn't say these are the things to put in your contract regarding jurisdiction, because there's some important nuances to that. So it will be available to anybody, but it would not be legal advice. It's business advice from a lawyer. So it'll be something that'll be available through our website and through our course platform. So that's the next product that we're working on for the next 3 to 6 months.
That's awesome. So, what would be your biggest piece of advice for the entrepreneurs and the business owners?
So I've given away the first two bits of advice. Know where your documents are, and if you need, we can provide a structure. But that's something you can chat GPT to, right? You can just say, what are the files that I need for my business? But if you want one that's been structured, we can provide that. Read your contracts. And then the third bit of advice that I would really have you do is sit down every quarter and annually and have a meeting of the business owners to say, where are we? What's going on with our business, and how are things going? One of the disputes always seems to come up, which is you've got the business owner who's doing the work and the business owner who's providing the money, and they both see things differently when it's time to dispute. The key is to make sure every quarter you really sit down and say, what are we doing? What do we agree what we're doing, and what are we doing next? You will avoid so many disputes if you do that on a quarterly basis. And if there ever is a dispute, it's easy to go back to that quarter before and go, this is what we agreed, and this is where we need to work. And that's a huge benefit to business owners.
Awesome. So before we end this conversation, just a random question popped into my mind. Nowadays, AI is a buzzword. So is there any impact of AI on the legal side?
So we're looking at it too. Lawyers are trying to figure out what this means to our practice. Judges are trying to figure out what this means to our practice. Another hat that I wear for the State Bar of Texas, I'm in a section called the Computer and Technology section, which deals with that intersection of the law and the technology for lawyers. Lawyers are our members. We're all trying to figure out what it means and how it impacts the practice of law. My only answer to people who are not lawyers who are trying to use it is this: AI and ChatGPT are viable, helpful tools when you don't need it to know anything. So write a letter to a friend of mine telling them, they made me sad or something. That's perfectly fine. But lawyers have gotten in trouble when we say, tell me the best case dealing with contract disputes between Washington and Texas. AI will come up with an answer. It has no connection to reality whatsoever. So as a lawyer, you're supposed to look at that and go, that case actually doesn't exist, because you've asked AI to do something that has to know something. If you're just trying to look for general guidance that is leaning you to that right spot, what are the 50 folders that I need for my new business to make sure I have all my documents? AI doesn't need to know the law or statutes for the most part for that. That's a perfect place to use it. But it's still, you have to remember, AI doesn't know anything. It just knows these are words that sort of go together based on the fact that it's looked at words that go together before. And keep it in constrained, whether you're a lawyer or a business owner, to limiting how much you ask it to do.
I think that's an honest opinion from your side, and I really enjoyed it. All right, thank you, Mitch. That was really good conversation, and I really enjoyed it. I can say this is one of my most favorite podcasts. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please let our viewers know how they can reach you and how they can enroll for your upcoming course.
Sure. The best way is to reach out on our website, zollfirm.com, ZOLLFIRM. I'm not in social media, so the TikTok ban didn't get me, even though it came back. I'm still trying to work on that part. I'm kind of old on that spot. So if you want to reach out to me, just reach out through my website. We're building out the structure to kind of get all those things going. For those signing up, we're working on a newsletter. I will not have that drip campaign that sends an email every hour, but we will work on a way of communicating. But just reach out by my website and we can learn more.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you. Have a good day, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.